I'm a therapist who sees a therapist. I specialize in working with clients who are in recovery from OCD or an eating disorder, and I'm also in recovery from OCD and an eating disorder myself. I became a licensed therapist in June of 2020, which means 3 things are true. 1, I don't know what the majority of my clients look like from the waist down. 2, how does that make you feel has been replaced by you're frozen and I can't hear you. And 3, my own weekly therapy sessions have become more important and more valuable than ever before. I'm so grateful that every Sunday morning I get to take off my therapist hat and become the client. I get to be raw, vulnerable, and honest. And then I get to spend the rest of the week creating space for my clients to be able to do the same. But therapists going to therapy confuses a lot of people. Don't you already know what you should be doing to help yourself? How can you help other people if you need to go to therapy too? But here's the thing. Going to therapy each week makes me a better therapist. There's a special privilege in knowing what it's like to be on both sides of the couch. Author and fellow therapist Lori Gottlieb says it best when she writes, "Of all my credentials as a therapist, my most significant is that I'm a card-carrying member of the human race." Before we get started today, I want to tell you a little bit about an activity that I like to do with my clients early on in treatment for OCD or an eating disorder. I call it the why wall. Here's the prompt. I want you to think of all your reasons why for choosing recovery. I want you to think of as many reasons why as you possibly can, because some days are harder than others, and maybe your reason why for choosing recovery today won't be a good enough reason why for tomorrow. I want you to write all of your reasons why on Post-it notes or index cards, and then I want you to tape them to your wall. Here are a few of my own reasons why for choosing to recover from my own OCD and eating disorder. For my family, for my future children, and because ice cream is delicious. On some days, thinking about how delicious ice cream tastes is enough for me to choose recovery. On other days, I need to dig a little bit deeper and think of my future children who don't even exist yet, but I already love them, and I know that they are worthy of a mom who respects her body and her mind. Both whys are equally valid and equally powerful. I'm going to take a moment here to provide a little psychoeducation about this values-based mindset that I'm describing. The concepts of values clarification and committed action in accordance with our values are from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. ACT was developed by Dr. Stephen Hayes, and it's made up of 6 main components, demonstrated here by the hexaflex model. Now, describing each of these 6 concepts in detail would likely be a whole talk on its own, but I want to focus on 2 of the 6 concepts for today: values clarification and committed action. Values clarification is what I just described earlier. It is the identification and acknowledgement of the things in life that are most important to us. Often we can lose sight of these things while living through a difficult experience such as a mental health condition. We tend to get a sort of tunnel vision, and we can forget what's important to us in the bigger picture. Committed action is the behavior associated with values clarification. It is the act of purposefully engaging in activities and experiences that align with our values and not with our maladaptive coping mechanisms, such as an eating disorder. I'm going to shift gears here briefly because I want to tell you a little bit more about another acronym, ERP. ERP stands for Exposure and Response Prevention Therapy, and it's considered the gold standard treatment for obsessive-compulsive disorder. According to the International OCD Foundation, ERP is the process of purposefully exposing yourself to the thoughts, images, and situations that provoke anxiety, and then making a conscious choice not to engage in a compulsive behavior in an attempt to alleviate that anxiety. Over time, the anxiety level will drop. I'm going to give you 2 examples from my own life and my own therapy to further exemplify these concepts. I'm going to show you another picture here. This picture is from September 2014. I had just started my freshman year here at the University of Miami. I attended a meeting on campus for Project HEAL, a national organization advocating for eating disorder awareness and assisting people in finding treatment. I was very early on in my own process of eating disorder recovery, and I was hesitant to even admit that I had an eating disorder. We were asked to answer the prompt, "Recovery is." I responded, "Recovery is getting ice cream with my boyfriend." I often ask my therapy clients similar questions. What does recovery look like to you? What would life look like if you chose recovery over your eating disorder today? What is more important to you than your eating disorder? In hindsight, getting ice cream with my boyfriend wasn't really about the ice cream at all. It was about my values. I value spending time with the people close to me. I value being present in the moment. I value eating delicious dessert. But my eating disorder voice has a knack for being louder than my values voice sometimes. Let's go back to ERP for a moment. Again, I'm going to give you an example from my own life and my own therapy. I have what we call contamination OCD, meaning that I'm fearful of germs and the prospect of getting sick. So, a few years ago, my therapist and I started eating apple slices in our therapy sessions. We would sit on the floor, crisscross applesauce, and we would cut up Honeycrisp apples that he had in his office. And then we proceeded to rub the apple slices everywhere. We rubbed them on the floor. We rubbed them on the doorknobs. We rubbed them on the staircase railing and the elevator buttons. We rubbed them all over the bathroom, yes, even on the toilet. And then we would eat the apple slices together. Much to my surprise, my anxiety level did drop over time. We did this every week for months. And also much to my surprise, we both lived to tell the tale. And yes, he is still my therapist. I know what you're thinking. This seems absurd. At least, that's what I thought at first. But here's the thing about ERP. It'll often feel like it's an overcorrection. The practice doesn't always fit the reality. In other words, there will most likely never be a naturally occurring situation where I have to eat food off the back of a toilet seat. But by engaging in these exposure and response prevention exercises, by purposefully exposing myself to my fears and my anxieties, the normal stuff didn't feel so scary anymore. I could do things like go to a restaurant and eat the bread that they put on the table without having to leave to go wash my hands first. This is where everything we've talked about so far today, values clarification, committed action, exposing ourselves to our fears, embracing uncertainty and discomfort, this is where it all comes together. I had to work hard to find my whys. I had to work hard to create thoughts that were louder and more important than my eating disorder thoughts and my OCD thoughts. I value my family. I value my friends. I value making memories and being present. I value all of these things, and they're so much more important to me than my fears. I have to make them more important and more valuable to me than my fears. And I'll be honest here, I don't win the battle over my brain every single time. This is definitely not a, I'm fully recovered and healed, and now I'm showing you how to do it too story. My thoughts still get the best of me sometimes, but I'm able to challenge them more than I used to. I'm able to remember my values. I'm able to remember my whys. So let's go back to our why wall here for a minute. Have you started thinking of your own whys? Because here's the best part about ACT and values-based living. You don't have to have an eating disorder or OCD or any mental health condition for it to be beneficial. You just have to be human. Because guess what? If you're human, You have fears. You have anxieties. You have moments that make your head spin and you wonder if the discomfort and the uncertainty is really worth it. And unless you've been living under a rock for the past 2 years, I'm sure you've had more of these moments than you ever thought you would. So when we're looking at what's next in this unpredictable world, it can be helpful to have some semblance of certainty and predictability. This is where our values come in. Because despite anything that life throws at us, our values will remain true. They might morph or change or evolve over the course of our lives, but we can always go back to them in moments of distress and uncertainty. So let's face it, we don't know what's coming next on any given day. Tomorrow could be completely different than today. But if we can create a meaningful life for ourselves based on values, authenticity, hope, and resilience, well, then we just might make it through. Thank you.